The winter of 1692 arrived early in the Kingdom of Eldoria. Snow had settled over the Ashford estate before the final harvest was collected, covering the stone paths and dead gardens with the false kindness of white silence. From a distance, House Ashford still looked noble. The towers stood. The banners remained above the walls. But anyone close enough could see the truth. The windows had stopped glowing at night. 3 servants remained where once there had been 40. The stables echoed. And in the library, where Lord Theodore Ashford had spent 30 years managing lands and protecting his family name, the fire had gone cold 2 months before his death because would cost money. Lady Evelina Ashford stood beside the eastern window with her hands folded behind her back. 23 years old. Dark brown hair pinned without decoration. Grey riding dress. Not black. Black invited pity. Grey asked for nothing. Below, men loaded furniture onto wagons. Her father's desk. Her mother's piano. Silver candelabras from 3 generations ago. Everything was being inventoried. Everything had a price now. The sound of boots approached behind her. Old Martha, who had cared for Evelina since childhood, stopped at the doorway. "They've arrived, my lady." Evelina did not turn immediately. Outside, snow drifted slowly over the courtyard where strangers carried away pieces of her life. How many? 4 creditors. A pause. And the auction master. Of course. The auction master arrived where things ended. Births had midwives. Deaths had priests. Ruined noble families had auction masters. Evelina closed her eyes briefly. Not from grief. Grief had exhausted itself months ago beside her father's bed while he struggled for breath and still apologized for leaving debts behind. The last thing he had said before dying was, "Take care of Solara." Not the estate. Not the title. The horse. As though he already understood what would survive. Evelina opened her eyes. "Prepare my coat." Martha hesitated. "My lady, you needn't attend." "I do. The creditors know who you are. They knew who I was before this." Her voice remained calm. "It changes nothing." Martha looked as though she wished to argue. Instead she bowed. "Yes, my lady." The courtyard filled by noon. Men gathered not because they cared but because ruined nobility attracted attention. Failure always did. Farmers. Merchants. Lesser lords. Even neighboring families had arrived under the excuse of business. The truth was simpler. People wanted to witness collapse. Evelina descended the stone steps alone. No maid beside her. No family. Only herself. The murmurs started immediately. Quiet enough to deny. Loud enough to wound. "Poor thing. She's younger than I thought." The debts were enormous. They say Lord Ashford borrowed against half the northern lands. Such a beautiful estate. Evelina walked through every word as if through snow. Cold. Expected. The auction master adjusted papers. Lady Ashford. His expression carried professional discomfort. People preferred tragedy at a distance. Closer, it became inconvenient. "The proceedings begin shortly." She inclined her head. "Then begin." His eyebrows lifted slightly. No tears. No pleading. Interesting. The first lots passed quickly. Wine stores. Furniture. Hunting equipment. Farmland. Every strike of the hammer sounded final. Sold. 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 Her childhood disappeared in measured amounts. She did not blink. Then. Lot 21. The auction master's voice changed slightly. The mare Solara. Age 15. White marking above the left eye. Exceptional lineage. The world narrowed. Evelina's fingers tightened behind her back. Not enough for anyone to notice. Only enough for pain. Solara. The horse had carried her before she learned confidence. Her father taught riding with impossible patience. When she fell at 8, crying and furious, he had lifted her back into the saddle and said. Again. When she refused. Fear grows where surrender begins. Again. Always again. Solara had remained through every winter afterward. The opening bid started. 30 gold crowns. Another voice. 40. Then. 50. Evelina recognized that voice before seeing the man. Sir Adrian Holloway stepped forward through the crowd with effortless confidence. 35. Handsome in the polished way wealthy men often were. Perfect coat. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. Cruel eyes. His family had expanded their influence steadily over 10 years. Debt made neighbors ambitious. 60, Adrian said lazily. The auction master noted it. Evelina looked away. Mistake. Because Adrian noticed. Men like him always noticed indifference. My lady. His voice carried. Too easily. She met his gaze. A smile formed. Slow. Deliberate. I had expected more resistance. Silence spread. People listened. Of course they listened. Evelina answered evenly. Resistance requires resources. His smile widened. And yet pride remains. Several men laughed quietly. Adrian continued. An interesting quality in someone who owns nothing. The air shifted. Even the snow seemed still. Evelina remained motionless. He stepped closer. Not enough to violate propriety. Enough. I offered marriage once. The crowd went quieter. Months earlier. Before her father's death. Before debts consumed everything. She remembered. An offer wrapped as salvation. Purchase disguised as affection. She had refused. Adrian tilted his head. You might have avoided all this. His eyes moved toward the estate. The auction. The gathered strangers. Then back to her. Though perhaps dignity feels warm enough during winter. A few uncomfortable laughs. Someone looked away. Because cruelty became unpleasant when too visible. Evelina felt heat rise beneath her skin. Not shame. Something colder. Stronger. She stepped forward. One step. The gravel crunched beneath her boots. The sound carried. Everyone watched. Her voice came steady. You mistake survival for surrender. The courtyard went silent. Adrian's expression changed slightly. Curiosity. Evelina continued. My family lost wealth. Another breath. We lost land. Her hands remained hidden within the folds of her coat. We buried my father. The words settled heavily. But none of those things gave you ownership over my worth. No one moved. Her eyes held his. Clear. Unshaking. You may purchase horses. A pause. Furniture. Another. Even houses. Then quietly. But you will never purchase what remains of me. Complete silence. The kind that arrives when people realize something true has entered the room. Adrian laughed. Or tried to. The sound barely formed. Because at that moment, a carriage stopped beyond the gates. Black. No family crest visible. 4 dark horses. The entire courtyard shifted attention. The door opened. A man stepped down. Tall. Broad shoulders beneath a dark winter coat. No unnecessary decoration. Power worn carelessly. As though status had become habit long ago. He removed one glove slowly. Snow gathered on his shoulders. The crowd recognized him before speaking. Recognition traveled differently among nobles. Not surprise. Calculation. The auction master went pale. Someone whispered. Impossible. Another. Lord Ravenshade. Cedric Ravenshade. 31. Owner of northern territories larger than some kingdoms. A man who avoided society whenever possible. Which only increased fascination. He walked through the courtyard without hurry. People moved aside instinctively. Not fear. Expectation. Power altered space around itself. His gaze passed over the auction master. The creditors. Adrian. Then stopped. On Evelina. 3 seconds. Perhaps 4. Long enough to notice. His eyes were unusual. Gray with something warmer beneath. Attention without judgment. He looked as though he listened before speaking. The feeling unsettled her immediately. Then he turned away. To the auction master. What is the current bid? Low voice. Calm. The auction master swallowed. 60 crowns, my lord. Cedric answered. 500. Silence. Absolute. Several people stared openly. The auction master blinked. 4, the mayor, my lord. Yes. No emphasis. No performance. As though spending fortunes required no thought. Adrian stepped forward. His expression sharpened. Ravenshade. Cedric glanced toward him. Nothing more. Recognition without interest. Adrian forced a smile. That seems excessive. Cedric adjusted one glove. Then. I was not aware your approval determined value. The words landed gently. Which made them worse. Several people lowered their heads. Adrian's face hardened. The auction master recovered first. 500 crowns. A pause. Any higher bids? None. Of course none. Sold. The hammer struck. Final. Solara belonged elsewhere now. Evelina exhaled slowly. Only then realizing she had stopped breathing. The crowd began moving again. Sound returned. Conversations. Boots. Snow. Life continuing. Cedric spoke quietly with a secretary who had appeared beside him. Not once looking toward Evelina again. Strange. Men who rescued usually wanted witnesses. She stood still another moment. Then turned. Because gratitude required acknowledgement. And debt terrified her. Crossing the courtyard took less time than expected. His secretary stepped aside. Cedric looked up. Up close. Unsettling. Not because of appearance. Though there was that. Because everything about him seemed intentional. Nothing accidental. Evelina lifted her chin. My lord. He waited. No interruption. No impatience. she said. The mare was my father's. A pause. I understand the circumstances. Still. I would repay the amount over time. His expression remained unreadable. You cannot. Direct. Without cruelty. Truth only. Her jaw tightened. I would attempt. Another silence. Then. Why? The question surprised her. Why? Because. Because after losing everything, effort was all remaining. Her answer emerged before calculation. Because negotiating is the only thing I still possess. His gaze changed. Very slightly. Something thoughtful. Then. The mare remains yours. Evelina froze. No. Not immediately. The word escaped. I cannot accept charity. It is not charity. Come again. The horse is irrelevant to my interests. A lie. Even exhausted, she recognized it. He knew she recognized it. And still said it. As though preserving her dignity mattered. Why? Nothing about this made sense. Snow moved softly between them. At last she said. Thank you. Formal. Controlled. He inclined his head once. Conversation ended. Or should have. She turned. Then his voice reached her. Quiet. Unexpected. The first thing I noticed, he said, was that everyone here expected you to break. Evelina stopped. Her breath caught somewhere she refused to acknowledge. Behind her, his voice continued. You did not. Silence. Then. You still stand like someone who has not surrendered. The world went strangely still. Her fingers tightened within her gloves. Because no one had said anything like that in months. Not after debts. Not after illness. Not after death. Not after loss. Slowly she looked back. Cedric Ravenshade was already speaking with his secretary again. As though the words cost nothing. As though he had not changed something invisible. Evelina stood in falling snow another second. Then turned away. But one thought followed her through the ruined estate and into the empty halls of House Ashford. How had a stranger looked at her once? And seen what even she was struggling to remember? Winter deepened over Eldoria after the auction. The Ashford estate no longer belonged to House Ashford, yet Evelina remained in the Western guest residence under a temporary agreement arranged by creditors. Temporary things often lasted longer than expected. Misery had a habit of extending itself. The mornings became colder. The servants fewer. And still, every dawn, Evelina walked to the stables before breakfast. Some habit survived ruin. Solara greeted her the same way every day. A shove of the nose against her shoulder. Impatient. Demanding. As though horses considered human grief inconvenient. You nearly became someone else's property, Evelina murmured one morning while adjusting the old leather harness. Solara pushed harder. That is not regret. Another push. No, I refuse to believe attempted violence counts as affection. The mare ignored criticism with practiced dignity. Snow rested beyond the stable doors. The world looked quieter than it felt. Evelina stayed longer than intended. Again. The stable smelled like old hay and saddle oil. Like childhood. Dangerous things often smelled familiar. Her father's voice existed there. His laugh. Instructions during riding lessons. Memories hidden in ordinary spaces. She closed her eyes briefly. Only a moment. Long enough. Then footsteps sounded behind her. Measured. Not hurried. She turned. Lord Cedric Ravenshade stood near the entrance. Dark coat. Leather gloves. Snow melting along one shoulder. He looked mildly surprised to find her there. Which suggested surprise was uncommon for him. My lord. Her voice remained even. His head inclined slightly. Lady Ashford. Silence settled. Not uncomfortable. Not yet. Solara noticed him immediately. The horse walked forward with suspicious enthusiasm. Evelina stared. Traitor. Cedric observed the interaction. The horse appears affectionate. She lacks standards. One corner of his mouth shifted. Barely. Not a smile. The possibility of one. A stable hand entered carrying supplies, noticed both nobles, and discovered urgent business elsewhere. People vanished quickly around complicated situations. Cedric glanced toward Solara. Has she settled? The question surprised Evelina. Storm clouds covered the sky. Solara waited near the rear enclosure. Another figure stood nearby. Cedric. Speaking quietly with a stable worker. The worker disappeared after noticing her. Again. People developed instincts. Cedric turned. Lady Ashford. My lord. Her eyes moved toward the horse beside him. What happened? Minor strain in the rear leg. Instant concern tightened her chest. She crossed immediately. Examined. Touched. Solara remained patient. Unusual. Cedric watched without interruption. After several moments. Nothing serious, he said. The healer comes tomorrow. Evelina exhaled slowly. Only then noticing tension. Rain thickened outside. Neither moved. The stable darkened. Water struck the roof overhead. Eventually she spoke. My father taught me riding here. The words emerged unexpectedly. She stopped. Because speaking about him had become difficult. Cedric remained silent. Waiting. Not pushing. So she continued. He lacked patience. A faint breath escaped her. His instructions rarely included kindness. Another pause. But Solara understood him. Her hand rested against the mare's neck. He worried more about her before dying than himself. Silence. Rain. Animals shifting nearby. Then quietly. I used to resent that. The admission surprised even her. The stable changed people. Made honesty easier. I thought. Her throat tightened slightly. He should have fought harder to remain. The words settled heavily. Too exposed. Immediately regret followed. Evelina looked away. Her shoulders had lowered. When had that happened? For months she trained herself against softness. Against appearing breakable. Yet. His voice interrupted gently. You do not need to defend grief. Simple. No philosophy. No comfort disguised as wisdom. Only truth. Something burned unexpectedly behind her eyes. Dangerous. She looked toward Solara instead. The mare pretended ignorance. Coward. Then. Warmth. Brief. His hand rested lightly against her shoulder. Not possession. Not obligation. Presence. 3 seconds. Perhaps 4. Gone before she processed it. Real. Entirely real. Evelina stood motionless. Rain faded somewhere beyond the stable. Her heartbeat became irritatingly noticeable. She straightened slowly. Returned her shoulders to proper position. Control restored. Mostly. The storm has lessened. Her voice remained composed. Cedric looked toward the doorway. Though rain continued. Yes, he said. A lie. Gentle. Intentional. Good night arrived soon after. She crossed the courtyard alone. Without looking back. She did not notice him remain near the stable entrance watching until distance swallowed her. Rumors began in early spring. Rumors always began quietly. A conversation. An observation. Someone noticing repeated proximity. Then. Questions. The kingdom enjoyed constructing stories where information lacked. Lady Evelina still lived near Ravenshade lands. Lord Cedric extended arrangements. Meetings occurred. Discussions lasted hours. An unmarried nobleman. An unmarried woman. Patterns formed. Meaning followed. By the time Evelina heard whispers, they had already spread. The first came inside a merchant's shop. An older woman smiled too kindly. Kindness sharpened intentionally. It comforts me, she said softly, that Lady Ashford has support. Support. The word carried weight. Evelina understood immediately. Her stomach turned cold. She returned home before sunset. Thinking. Calculating. Because reputation mattered. Not vanity. Survival. A ruined noblewoman without reputation possessed nothing. 2 days later she went directly to Cedric's estate office. No announcement. No hesitation. His secretary looked alarmed. Appropriate. She entered. Cedric stood beside a desk covered with documents. He looked up immediately. Something in her expression altered his. Concern appeared. Small. Visible. Lady Ashford. I need something. Direct. He waited. Again. Always waiting. Words came controlled. I need you to publicly state there is no attachment between us. Silence. His expression changed slightly. Understanding. Then. No. The answer arrived calmly. The room seemed colder. Evelina stared. You refuse. A statement creates legitimacy for rumors. His voice remained level. It worsens matters. They concern me. They are being handled. Handled. The word struck sharply. Her breath stopped briefly. Then anger arrived. Not loud. Worse. Precise. You knew. His silence answered. How long? Days? Weeks? You knew. 3 words. Different now. His jaw tightened. I intended to resolve. Her interruption came instantly. Without informing me. Silence. Complete. Something inside her aligned suddenly. Patterns. The horse. The arrangements. The protection. Every kindness decided for her. Every solution prepared beforehand. As though she remained fragile. Manageable. A problem. His voice lowered. I was protecting you. The answer appeared before thought. I am not something requiring management. The room went still. His expression changed. Not anger. Impact. Evelina continued quietly. More dangerous. I am not an estate issue. Another breath. Not a contract. Her eyes held his. I am a person. He stood motionless. For perhaps the first time in years. Without solution. Without immediate response. Her voice softened unexpectedly. Because truth often did. I know you believed you were helping. A pause. And that makes it worse. The words hurt. Both. Visible. She looked away first. Because exhaustion arrived suddenly. Heavy. Ancient. I need to leave. His head lifted sharply. No. Not spoken. But present. Still. He said nothing. Because perhaps. For once. He understood choice belonged elsewhere. Evelina curtsied. Formal. Perfect. Then left. No dramatic exit. No tears. Only absence. Sometimes absence destroyed more than anger. Behind her, Cedric remained standing beside unfinished documents. Motionless. As though someone had handed him a problem impossible to solve. And for the first time, Lord Cedric Ravenshade understood that protecting someone without asking could become another way of taking something from them. That night Evelina packed. Few dresses. Books. Letters. Practical things. Loss had taught efficiency. Before sleeping she visited the stable one final time. Solara pressed her head against Evelina's shoulder. Patient. Steady. The way creatures remained when humans complicated everything. You stay. Her voice nearly failed. The horse pressed closer. I know. Outside, wind moved over dark fields. Inside, something hurt in a way grief had not. Different. New. More dangerous. Because grief belonged to endings. This felt unfinished. And unfinished things followed people. Even after leaving. The journey to Blackmere took 2 days. Rain followed the carriage most of the way. Not storms. Just steady gray weather that seemed determined to remind travelers the world contained more cold than warmth. Lady Evelina Ashford spent nearly the entire journey looking through the window. Fields passed. Villages. Rivers turning silver beneath weak winter light. The farther she traveled from Ravenshade lands, the quieter her thoughts should have become. They did not. Memory had strange habits. It kept returning to unnecessary things. A hand against her shoulder. Dry humor over old maps. The way Lord Cedric listened. Actually listened. Annoying memories. Dangerous ones. By the time the carriage reached her aunt's estate, exhaustion had replaced thought. The manor at Blackmere stood smaller than Ashford House had been. Older. Built from dark stone and practical decisions. No unnecessary elegance. The kind of place created by people who preferred survival over appearance. Lady Miriam Vale opened the door herself. 58. Widowed. Sharp eyes. The sort of woman who observed everything and commented only when useful. Her gaze moved over Evelina once. Travel coat. Pale face. Tension hidden beneath posture. Assessment completed. You look tired. Not sympathy. Observation. Evelina attempted. I am well. Her aunt snorted softly. No woman arriving alone during winter says that truthfully. Then. Come inside. No further questions. Mercy disguised as indifference. Days passed. Then weeks. Blackmere remained quiet. Predictable. Safe. Her aunt maintained routines with military precision. Breakfast. Correspondence. Estate management. Evening reading. The order helped. Not immediately. Slowly. Like healing bones. Something uncomfortable happened after the second week. Evelina began sleeping through entire nights. Then waking disappointed. Because dreams stopped. And dreams. Even painful ones. Sometimes preserve people. One afternoon her aunt entered the sitting room carrying embroidery she clearly had no intention of using. An excuse. Experienced women developed them. She sat opposite Evelina. Silence lasted several minutes. Then. There is a man. The statement arrived casually. Like weather. Evelina looked up immediately. Her aunt continued examining thread. I have lived long enough to recognize when someone leaves more behind than luggage. Still no eye contact. Infuriating. Evelina returned attention to her book. There is no man. Lady Miriam adjusted fabric. Then there is someone who disappointed you. Another stitch. Which is often worse. Silence. The fireplace crackled. Outside, snow gathered slowly. At last Evelina spoke. He made decisions for me. Her aunt nodded once. As though receiving expected information. He believed he was helping. Another nod. And did he? The answer came too quickly. That is irrelevant. Her aunt finally looked up. No. Quiet. Certain. That is usually the important part. Evelina frowned. He handled things without asking. Yes. No defense. Unexpected. Lady Miriam set embroidery aside. Men raised to protect often confuse protection with permission. A pause. It explains behavior. Another. It does not excuse it. Evelina stared toward the fire. Because explanations complicated anger. And anger was easier. Far away, on Ravenshade lands, Cedric worked. Or attempted to. Estate reports accumulated. Meetings continued. Problems appeared. Solutions followed. Everything proceeded. Except. Concentration failed strangely. Frequently. His secretary noticed first. Of course he noticed. Efficient men observed disruption. 3 weeks after Evelina left, the secretary placed documents on Cedric's desk. Waited. Then. The Eastern contracts require approval. Cedric signed automatically. Another pause. My lord. Silence. The secretary rarely repeated himself. Cedric looked up. The older man chose words carefully. The matter involving Lady Ashford. Nothing changed in Cedric's expression. Which meant something had. Has concluded. The secretary continued. The rumors ended. Another. The legal disputes resolved. Still silence. Then quietly. Yet you continue reviewing the same page. Cedric looked toward the document. Unread. For 20 minutes. His jaw tightened slightly. The secretary bowed. Retreated. Wise man. A letter arrived at Blackmere near the beginning of spring. Small. Ordinary. From an old acquaintance. Most of the contents involved local society. Events. Marriages. Minor scandals. Near the end. The unpleasant rumors surrounding Lord Ravenshade and yourself seem to have disappeared entirely. I do not know how. Several influential voices changed their positions almost overnight. Evelina stared at the sentence. Again. Then once more. He resolved it. Without telling her. Exactly as promised. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. Not relief. Not anger. Something worse. Understanding. Because he had listened. Poorly. Imperfectly. But. Listened. The realization remained uncomfortable all evening. Cedric arrived at Blackmere on a Monday. Without warning. Without formal announcement. Snow still covered sections of road despite approaching spring. His horse reached the manor near dusk. Lady Miriam answered the door personally. Her eyes moved over him. Long coat. Travel dust. Exhaustion hidden carefully. Recognition followed. No surprise. Interesting. Women like her rarely appeared surprised. Lord Ravenshade. Cedric inclined his head. Lady Vale. Silence. Assessment. Then. You traveled far. Yes. Another pause. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Decision made. Come inside. Not approval. Permission. Different things. Evelina heard voices before entering the hallway. Her aunt's. Another. Lower. Familiar. Her steps stopped immediately. Impossible. Then. Reality corrected itself. Nothing impossible existed about determined people. She turned the corner. And froze. Cedric stood near the entrance. Travel coat darkened with melted snow. No attendants. No secretary. Only himself. The sight unsettled her immediately. Because powerful men rarely arrived alone. His eyes found hers. Everything else disappeared. Briefly. Then. Lady Ashford. Her throat tightened without permission. Infuriating. My lord. Formal. Controlled. Her aunt observed both. Of course. Then announced. I require tea. A transparent lie. She left. Without hurry. Leaving silence behind. Experts. Both remained standing. Several seconds. Finally Evelina spoke. You found the address. His answer came simply. Yes. No explanation. Though one appeared after a moment. Parish records. A pause. 2 days. Another. It should have taken longer. Something shifted near his mouth. Almost amusement. Gone quickly. Perhaps she imagined it. The sitting room became inevitable. Hallways could not contain conversations carrying months. They entered. Neither sat immediately. Cedric remained near the window. Evelina beside the fireplace. Distance. Necessary. His voice came first. The rumors ended. I know. Silence. Then. You were correct. Unexpected. Her eyes lifted. He continued. I handled matters without asking. Another pause. Long. Careful. The fastest solution remains my instinct. No defense. Only truth. His gaze lowered briefly. Then returned. I am trying to learn another way. The words settled heavily. Because people like Cedric Ravenshade rarely admitted ignorance. Evelina answered quietly. You solved the problem. Yes. Another silence. Different now. I also caused part of it. Truth again. No escape. The room seemed smaller. Outside, Wind moved against old windows. Cedric spoke. I did not come to defend myself. Her breath caught slightly. Then. Why did you come? The question remained between them. Several seconds passed. He answered eventually. Slowly. As though precision mattered. Perhaps it did. When you asked me to deny attachment between us. He stopped. Not hesitation. Correction. Searching. Then. I realized something unpleasant. Evelina remained motionless. His gray eyes held hers completely. No avoidance. No distance. The possibility frightened me. Her heartbeat changed. Sharp. Unexpected. His voice stayed calm. Always calm. Which somehow made everything worse. I did not want the rumors true. A pause. Then softer. And part of me did. The world narrowed. Fireplace. Snow. Breathing. Nothing else. Cedric looked toward the floor briefly. First time. As though unfamiliar territory existed. I spent years believing affection complicated judgment. Another breath. I thought care made people careless. His gaze returned. Steady. But somewhere between maps and stable conversations. Silence. Then. You became important. No poetry. No performance. Truth. Raw. Direct. More dangerous. Evelina stood perfectly still. Because movement seemed impossible. He continued. I failed repeatedly. Simple. I protected when I should have asked. Another. I solved when I should have listened. His expression altered slightly. Not weakness. Something rarer. Honesty without armor. I do not know how to become different immediately. The confession landed heavily. Because perfect men terrified. Flawed ones. Trying. Destroyed defenses. His final words arrived quietly. But I know I would rather learn with you than remain unchanged without you. Silence. Complete. The fire cracked softly. Outside, snow continued. Evelina looked at him. Really looked. At the exhaustion beneath control. The journey visible despite posture. The absence of attendance. Pride abandoned somewhere along the road. Because he came himself. No letters. No commands. Him. Only him. Her chest hurt suddenly. The realization came unwillingly. She missed him. Months. And still. Missed him. Terrible. Her voice emerged softer than intended. You made choices for me. Not accusation now. Memory. Verification. His answer arrived immediately. Yes. No excuse. You may again. A pause. Honest. Probably. One corner of his mouth shifted faintly. Sad humor. Barely there. But if I do. Silence. Then. You will tell me. Her breath caught. He continued. And I will listen. Simple. Not promise of perfection. Promise of effort. Different. Perhaps stronger. The room remained still. Long enough. Then Evelina took one step forward. Only one. Tiny. Insignificant. Everything. His expression changed. Not visibly for most people. For him. Entirely. Hope. Careful. Almost disbelieving. Cedric raised one hand slowly. Not taking. Offering. Question without words. This time. Choice belonged to her. Evelina stared several seconds. Then placed her hand in his. Warm. Real. His fingers closed carefully. As though holding something breakable. Her eyes burned unexpectedly. She hated that. His voice lowered. Almost rough. First time. I love you. No hesitation. No decoration. The words entered the room and remained. Unavoidable. I think. He stopped briefly. Corrected. No. Another breath. I know I began loving you the day everyone expected surrender and you stood anyway. Her heartbeat became impossible. He continued quietly. You remained strong when strength cost everything. Silence. Then. And I have loved you since. The world seemed strange. Larger. Smaller. Both. Evelina looked at him. At the man who solved everything before asking. Who traveled alone through winter. Who admitted failure. Who learned. Slowly. Imperfectly. Her answer came with painful honesty. You frustrated me. His eyes changed slightly. Something close to amusement. Wet at the edges. Impossible. You made me angry. Another breath. You made me leave. His hand tightened almost imperceptibly. Then. I loved you anyway. Truth. Entire. His eyes closed briefly. Relief passing through someone who rarely allowed himself any. When he opened them. Different. Lighter. Her shoulders lowered. For the first time in months. She did not correct posture afterward. And when he kissed her. It carried no urgency. Only certainty. The kind built slowly. Map by map. Silence by silence. Choice by choice. They married in late autumn. Small ceremony. Intentional. Lady Miriam attended. Complained twice. Approved completely. Solara consumed part of a decorative arrangement before sunrise. Participation. Years passed. The eastern lands recovered. New libraries formed. Arguments continued. Because love did not remove disagreement. It changed its shape. One winter morning long afterward, Evelina stood examining estate reports while Cedric entered carrying revised irrigation plans. He stopped beside her. Too close for strangers. Natural for them. The southern route requires approval, he said. She looked up slowly. Raised one eyebrow. His expression changed immediately. Recognition. Then. Before. A pause. Correcting himself. I should have asked before. Her mouth curved. Small. Real. Outside, snow covered the fields. Inside, the fire burned steadily. And somewhere beyond the windows, Solara was likely eating something expensive. The world remained imperfect. People remained imperfect. Love had never required perfection. Only this. Learning. Again. Always again.